It's my opinion that there are two kinds of painters. There are the kind that paint on anything, that buy pre-made canvases, canvas boards, and things like that from the art store. Maybe they go as far as buying pre-made stretcher bars, things like that. And then there are the artists that are gonna make the surface that they're painting on. And it doesn't have to be a canvas, but whatever it is that they want to paint on, making the surface is part of the piece. And I would put myself into the category of needing to make my own surface. I suppose I would paint on anything, and there are certain ready-made surfaces that I've found interest in painting on. But if I'm gonna do a painting, I like to build my canvas stretcher, stretch my canvas, treat it before I begin the painting. And that's what I've been doing with all the shape paintings in the series that I've been showing you, is that all of those stretchers I had built when I was in undergrad at Michigan State, because I had such a good time making the stretcher that I made an excessive amount of them, and I'm only finally running out now. So these rectangles are to continue the Into the Blue series. They're scaled in such a way that I can execute the 3-axis grid across the surface and continue doing the same work that I was doing with the hexagons, triangles, etc., but bring it to you guys in a rectilinear format. So what you're looking at here are the frames set up for 2 different rectangle canvases. If you're interested in making your own canvases, you might have looked at the price of pre-made stretcher bars from Blick or that sort of thing and found that it's really expensive. But you're in luck, because the reality is that canvas stretchers are very simple to make and the material is pretty cheap. So when I'm making a canvas stretcher, I'll buy pieces of 1x4 boards from Home Depot. The catch in all of this is that you need a table saw and a miter saw. So the trick is to cut the center, cut the board in half down the center with like a 15-degree bevel. So the beginning of the cut, finding the very center is a little bit tricky and the most important part. So you just nudge the fence of your saw back and forth and take little bits from each side until it lines up. And you do want to get it as close to perfect as you can, because once they're setting on the ground as these pieces are, you want them to be the same height. Once my piece is cut in half, it'll look like this, or it'll almost look like this. I sand the stock after I've split it, and that way it's nice to work with. I've already knocked down the hard saw cut, and I don't have to come back and do it later. You can also rip boards in half that have no bevel for your support pieces. Simple enough. So I cut all my pieces to length, I mitered my corners, I stood them up in the shape that they were going to be in. I wrapped my strap clamp around the frame and made sure that the strap was flat all the way around. This strap came with these nice corner pieces, but I didn't need those necessarily, or I wouldn't use them in other shapes. All that's to say, if you have a strap but no corner pieces, you can proceed, and I've checked the square, so I know that this is all square. So I'm gonna let this dry for at least half an hour. I'm gonna use crown staples in the corners, and I'm gonna use a nail gun to glue in my corner pieces. But I'm gonna let this set up and cure for, like I said, at least a half hour so that it becomes solid. One thing that I'm noticing, my frame to your right is laying on the floor, sitting flat, real nice. This frame is riding up in this corner here. And I wish I had a trick for you on how to deal with that. And it could be a number of factors. It could be that my miters aren't perfectly flush, but it could also be that the board is warped. When I shop for wood, I spend a lot of time digging through the pile looking for a straight board with straight, even grain and as few knots as I can find. Because as soon as you split that board in half, it's gonna warp even further. So if it's warped to begin with, you're gonna have a real wonky piece of wood. Now, the one way out of that is to buy better quality lumber. So when you go, you'll notice like there's the cheap 1x4s, and then there's like the ones for trim and so on that will be clear of knots. And I guess to make it clear, I'm using clear pine, which is, well, the last time I checked, around $350 a board for like an 8 or 10 foot 1x4. So by the time you split that down, you're getting, you know, 2 boards out of 1, if you want to think about it that way. Anyhow, this is glued up and can just sit here, and all it took was a strap clamp, some wood glue, a table saw, and a miter saw. And then of course I'm gonna use a nailer, a stapler, and I'll be in business. So here I'm removing the strap clamp after the glue is dried. I'm gonna take a crown stapler and staple all my corners. I put 2 staples in one side and 1 staple in the adjoining side, and work my way rotationally around the piece. I mentioned that I checked the pieces for square, but I didn't explain how I did this. So when you want to make a rectangle canvas, the way you check it for square is by measuring the diagonal across each direction. So you go from one corner to the opposite, and you take that diagonal measurement, you take the other diagonal measurement, and then if they're the same, you have a square piece. And if they're not, you can sort of tug on the tape measure and pull those corners and remeasure until you have matching numbers. So split the difference between the two and you'll have a square stretcher. So it's important to do that after you've put some tension on the straps, and make sure that those numbers line up before the glue starts to cure. After that, you hope that it remains square and that it cures in place. With rectangles, of course, you're working with all 45-degree angles, and your corner pieces are going to help maintain that square and make it rigid. For these rectangles, I made myself some very large corner braces, as you can see, and what that does is it makes it more rigid. It also gives me some space when I'm stretching the canvas to work into the corner, but my goal is to try and reduce the amount of support that the canvas needs. When I was in undergrad and I had access to a wood shop, we would make a cross brace, a literal cross that would go from center to center each side. But in order to do that, we would create a half lap joint using a radial saw, which I do not have. So again, the larger corner braces allow me to distribute more of the load. And what I ended up doing that's not included in the video is I made a single straight cross piece around the center. So your cross pieces cut down the size of the cell and make the space more rigid. You're going to put a fair amount of pressure on the stretcher when you stretch the canvas, so there is the possibility of distorting the frame if it's not well supported. If you're working with a smaller dimension rectangle, this is less of an issue. So I'm just using Titebond wood glue, and I'm gluing my corner pieces, and for the corner pieces I'm using a brad nailer to nail them in place. I realize that I haven't shown you guys in detail the full process. I'm just giving you an overview. The takeaway here is that you don't need to spend money on specialized materials. Everything you need to make a canvas stretcher can be found at Home Depot, provided you have the basic woodworking tools and know-how to cut the miter angles, split the board in half with a bevel, and put it all together with some nailers. Ultimately, you can make yourself a far better canvas stretcher using these basic materials than you could buy at the store. And when you go to stretch your own canvas, you're going to be able to achieve far greater tension than you would get out of a pre-made canvas. The pre-made canvases are often also pre-treated, and they're just not that high quality of a surface. But when you stretch your own canvas and then proceed to treat it, by treating the canvas, that process also adds additional tension to the surface and gives you a nice, smooth, even surface to work with. Please let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, if there's anything that you don't understand or details that you wish I had expanded on further. And thanks for tuning in. In the future, I will do a more detailed job of documenting this process so that you guys can see exactly what I'm doing with the table saw and the miter saw. Thank you guys.